Hello, greetings. My name is Larry Fessenden, and I'm a very big fan of the Woodstock Film Festival. Thanks for having us. Thanks for all of you for gathering. And now I give you Brad DOURIF. I believe, Brad, you're a local, so this is...
Yes, very much.
Yes. I want to speak about myself for a moment, and then we'll move over to Brad's story. But when I was a kid, so I would have been maybe 12 in 1975, I saw Cuckoo's Nest, and it was one of the most potent experiences. I still call it one of my favorite movies. And while I was entranced by Jack Nicholson, it was the overall vibe of the movie. And as Mayra said, I think Billy Bibbit is the heart of the film and brings out the best in Jack Nicholson, who ends up fighting with Nurse Ratched in order to, in my opinion, sort of free Billy Bibbit. So the performance was riveting. I'm sure in all your years you always have to call back to it, but I'm sort of curious if you could discuss maybe your early years and how you arrived at this seminal performance. And
Okay, so I was born in West Virginia in 1950. I saw my mother was an actress. She was an amateur. And I saw her on stage in a rehearsal, and she was doing a speech about a butterfly. And somehow I saw the butterfly. And I just wondered how she did that. How could she make me see a butterfly? And I was kind of haunted by it, and I think that was where I began to really, I want to do that. I want to make people see a butterfly. So then Conchata Ferrell, I was doing something in Huntington, West Virginia. Conchata Ferrell, who I had never met, came back and said, "What are you doing here?" And I said, "Probably wasting my time." And she said, "Come to New York. There's a theater there." And so I did. I went and showed up on her doorstep and said, "I'm here, now what?" And I joined Circle Repertory Theater Company, which turned out to be making a lot of hits. One of them was When You Coming Back, Red Ryder, that Milos Forman saw it, and he cast me as Billy Bibbit in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, and that's how that happened.
let me, once again, I was going to tell this story as well. So I went to a high school, and I wanted to be an actor because that was my understanding of movies. This was in the 70s, and it wasn't as clear that the director was so essential and all of that. I just loved actors and performances. And I did your role in When You Coming Back, Red Ryder. And in the script, there was a picture of your production.
Yes, of course.
And I remember the way you stood was like this. And I based my entire performance on that photograph.
On your hand. I did a character once, Lanford Wilson short, one-act play, and I was gonna be a garage attendant, and I always was, when I went to explain what was wrong with my car anytime to a garage guy, they were always like looking down and going like this. And I thought, that's like a pitcher, in baseball. So I started, I had a great time. I started, being like a pitcher all the time,
Mm-hmm.
And that's how I got that character.
So it leads actually jumping around, if we could. So I know you actually ended up teaching acting as well, right? And I just wonder, so your mom was an actor, and you have that seminal story, but were you watching movies and inspired by the Brando, which was of that era, or was there something else? What were your inspirations, or did you come at it more organically? What was your feeling about all that?
I think anybody who gets involved in film, theater, Number one, I mean, anytime I went to a play and saw kids up there and I was young, I was insanely jealous. You know, I want to be up there. And so that's one thing. I saw, my father died when I was 3. And I saw, and I had a stepfather, but that wasn't going well. And I saw 2 movies back to back. One was The Red Balloon, and the other was The Bicycle Thief. And the relationship between the father and the son in The Bicycle Thief, and the feeling about trouble feeling special, or trouble feeling worthwhile, or something magical about, you know, a reason to live, you know. Not that I was suicidal, but from The Red Balloon, I felt like those 2 movies made me not feel alone, made me feel like I was actually a part of the world and I had a place in it somehow. So I think, you know, when movies do something to you, then it means so much more. And now I've lost the train of where am I going with this?
Well, I mean, I was saying, you know, which school of acting intrigued you, but let me just stop with what you said, because first of all, I love that you call it The Bicycle Thief, because it dates you, but I still want to call it The Bicycle Thief because it's called Bicycle Thieves. At some point, they changed the name, which is to say they decided that it had originally be called that, but
Wasn't it an Italian movie?
well, of course. So what is the Italian? Does anybody know the truth about this? Because I like Bicycle Thief because it's about the dad.
It's about
is
the father and
accused.
the son.
Exactly, but of course it's obviously about all the thieves and you know, all the people with
Class.
the class. It's a class film. Anyway, a wonderful movie. And also The Red Balloon, which was a strange, because it wasn't it a short of some sort?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah, and The Bicycle Thief wasn't that long either.
Well, yeah, but it was.
Yeah, no, The Red Balloon is. Has everybody here seen The Red Balloon? Yeah, if you haven't, do. It was really ahead of its time, and I think a really moving, very special movie.
Yeah. And so when you did teach, which was after your...
I taught at Columbia
University,
because Milos Forman became the head of the film department at Columbia. And he asked me if I would be interested in doing a class, and I did a class in directing actors, or actors learning how to direct. No, directors learning how to direct actors.
Right.
It was a while ago. Yeah, that was, I loved it.
Yeah. Tell us about Billy Bibbit. Like, what is your methodology? Did you go to insane asylums? Did you do reading? Did you learn the stutter from, just if you would, give us a little flavor of that process for you.
Well, the first thing was conversation with Milos.
Yeah.
And Milos said that, first of all, he was always fascinated by people being on the spot. One of the things was he loved doing stuff about auditions. In 2 movies, there were a lot of auditions, and it was wonderful because auditions are terrifying. And he said, every time I've spoken with somebody who has a bad stutter, he said, I think they're heroic because at the moment that they're trying to talk, they are totally alone. And that was, the center of Billy Bibbit, to find that. And the second thing is I worked with a woman who taught people how to work with stutterers. Mm-hmm. Actually had a textbook. So I went over that. I had several sessions with her, and then I went out and stuttered. I would go to a place where, like Grand Central Station, mm-hmm. and ask for directions, and where people are, don't have a lot of time. And It actually, people were really nice. I mean, I felt kind of guilty because they would really stop and change who they were, you know, as I struggled through whatever it was I was trying to ask.
The thing about it, the performance, but it's the type of stutter you have, is there's this sort of
That was an accident.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. I mean, that's what became so unique, because anybody might do, but you know.
That's actually.
But you have this feeling of, you know.
That stutters do that.
Yeah.
After a while, if you do it enough, you'll get some stuff that you know, happens automatically, and that's what happened. Yeah. I think I kind of thought at the time, well, this might be pretty good. This thing.
Yeah, and it just has this desperation, and it connects you further to the character. Now, of course, we can't move on from the movie without talking about, well, Louise Fletcher, but Nicholson, and just the general ensemble, and of course, all the mental patients. Many of them have become, you know, Danny DeVito. So Milos Forman obviously had an eye for talent, yourself included. And what was the ensemble like? And did you continue on to be pals?
Well, we were all stuck in the same place. You know, Salem, Oregon in those days was not what I would call a hopping town. So, you know, it was, you know, the beef place and one other restaurant, and that was it. So we you know, we got to know each other, and yeah, when we first came, we were all escorted up to all these different maximum security. We would spend the day there talking to people, and so group therapy. We were in a real group therapy session together, that whole kind of thing, so that we were an ensemble. I also worked at Circle Rep before that, which was an ensemble. The whole idea was to create an ensemble of actors who knew how to work with writers. That was the whole idea. And so I was really trained to look out for that kind of thing and to try to support it. And a bunch of other people, I guess, were too, because we all got along, and we all were trying to do the same thing. We were definitely supportive of each other. It was a real ensemble.
Well, anyway, that's Cuckoo's Nest. It's seminal work, and I'm also fascinated in terms of, you know, a career. I mean, I think we were in the green room, and everybody comes in and references Billy Bibbit. In fact, Meira said that people come in and they have Billy Bibbit tattoos. I mean, it's one of those seminal characterizations that starts to live in the mind, and you know, you'll forever be associated. And obviously, down the line, he became Chucky. Which is why they invited me to talk to you, because they think I'm a horror guy. But I'll be honest, I mean, I'd rather hang out with Billy Bibbit than Chucky, but maybe that's wise anyway. So the next one, I mean, one of the legacies of your career is actually the directors you've worked with, because next you went to John Huston.
That's right.
And of course, this is Wise Blood, based on the Flannery O'Connor story. A Good Man is Hard to Find. Is that what it is?
No.
Or is
it's Wise Blood. She wrote it. She was writing it when she came down with lupus, and she went to the Fitzgerald's house, and it was a long novel at that point, and she had a fever, and she, you know, fell out, and they got her doctors and found out she had lupus. And they put her on cortisone, and she was on cortisone for the rest of her life, which wasn't kind to her. And she wrote great stuff, and she cut Wise Blood down. It's an actually wonderful little novel, and actually all of her work is.
Yeah. And what was your way into that character? And what was your relationship to that director?
They
Who's in it
wanted
too, right?
me. They wanted me to do Enoch Emery, and I read it, and I went, "No, I want to do Hazel Motes."
Oh, wow.
And I think they had Tommy Lee Jones because they were friends with Tommy through Harvard, and but he, for some reason, didn't do it. And so then they decided to go ahead and audition me, and the fools went for it, and I got to do it. And it was a part I really wanted to do. There was something, I'm from West Virginia, and although I wasn't, I don't know the real Appalachian experience, but I certainly knew the people. And there was something very felt rather Appalachian to me. It's not, it's much more deep south, but it has that. The Appalachian thing is everyone is ultimately much more self-sufficient. They can do everything. And they have a lot of, they're extraordinary. Deep down, they're pretty extraordinary. They were very self-sufficient. They didn't have any, there was no roads going in and out for those people, and they didn't have any commerce. They didn't know how to read and write, but they had these very strong communities, and I don't think that spirit ever left. Anyway, that was.
And you were immersed when you filmed? You went to the...
We were in Macon, Georgia, where she was from.
Oh, yeah.
And that was because the Fitzgeralds produced the movie and wrote it. And Flannery O'Connor had made sure that they had control because she wanted them to do it.
Now, I'm sort of jumping around, and please just reignite the ship. But so I'm picturing as seminal roles in like Mississippi Burning, which you worked with Gene Hackman on that. And how was that? I mean, what was this journey like? Did you like John Huston? Was that?
What was John Huston like? Yeah, every great director, and I've had the luck to work with a few, was great for a different reason.
Yeah.
And they had a different thing. John Huston understood film and was very brave about it. I mean, he would try to get things in a two-shot, and if he felt like it worked in the two-shot, that was it. He wouldn't cover. He wouldn't, which was, people didn't do that. Nobody did that. And he never looked at the actors when they were doing a take. He looked down at the newspaper or something. I always thought he was bored, but I think he was listening because in those days you couldn't see. You could see the shot ahead of time, but there was no way you could see the performance. So he would hear it, and he could tell by hearing it if it worked or not. What else can I? Yeah, he had a very simple and intuitive idea about how things, and it worked.
Yeah.
Great movie. He really knew what he was doing. So yeah.
Well, now we're talking about the greats. So please tell us how you came into Lynch's life and he into yours.
Apparently, David saw Wise Blood. I know that you mentioned it, and he loved it, and he wanted to cast me in the lead in Dune, but they weren't having it, and so he cast me as Piter DeBreeze.
Which is a lucky break, first of all, for what's his name, Lynch's guy, but what a performance you put in. So were you happy with the switch to be more?
Well, I would have preferred the lead.
So that's an interesting point. Did you start to feel marginalized? Because, of course, we've joked about, Chucky and so on, you have these seminal performances, but you start playing more villainous and
I,
colorful characters, if you will.
I have to admit, when I was young, I was really insecure. And I just was not ready to be a movie star. There's just, and also I'm badly ADD, and the amount of work it takes to really do all the PR and all the extra work is not something I wanted to deal with, really. I found out. I just wanted to act. And also, Fiona was born, and I took one look at her and I went, oh, I get it, I'm a whore. My job now is to put food on the table and make sure we had a roof over our head. That was what I did. So horror saved me. And, I did a lot of it.
Yeah. Well, let's talk.
I don't watch horror movies because they scare me,
But you've created some fantastic characters within the genre, and that's why the genre is so spectacular, because it actually allows for this kind of heightened expression. And my mind drifts to, so we've got Lynch, you were also in Blue Velvet, so it's always nice to be called back. I think that's the sign of at least a compliant, if not a great actor, is that they want you back. So, and you've had that, of course, with Werner, who's another great, who's very specific. Tell us about Werner.
Werner is a trip. I mean,
so this is Herzog. I'm sorry to be first name basis. These are some of my heroes.
My first movie with him was Scream of Stone. And I don't know, I came in and he just wanted to talk. He told me that I asked him about Klaus Kinski because I've seen Kinski's performances are incredible, and he said, well, I'll tell you about him. He said we were shooting. What was the one with taking the boat? Fitzcarraldo, and he was. You get coffee. There's a big vat of coffee, and everybody gets a thermos of coffee for the day. And but the person who gets the first thermos's coffee is hot. The person who gets the last the thermos is cold. So the way they did it is they let everybody, there was a line, and everybody got a place in the line, and so eventually every person would get the hot coffee, and every person would get the cold coffee. Well, he was on a walkie-talkie, and he was Werner, and he was trying to get this guy, single-engine plane, figure out where he was going to land, and the guy was running out of gas, and it's a rainforest, which means the trees are very high, and if that guy can't find a runway, he's dead. And Kinski walks in and says, "My coffee is cold," and Werner says, "Listen, Klaus, I can't do anything about that right now. He said, if you don't get me hot coffee, I'm leaving." And that was it. Werner had enough. And so Werner got out a Glock, cocked it, and put it to his head and said, "All right, Klaus, you can leave, but your brain stays here." So I said, the moral of that story is don't cross a guy. But I was doing a scene where I played a guy who, it was all about climbing to this very dangerous mountain called Serratore. And I was playing a guy who, in the story, had actually summited it, but nobody knew about it. And this guy came back crazy. And I gave myself the idea that, because I had to walk into a tent and start talking to people out of the blue. And I gave myself that I should be like a cold wind from the top of the mountain that just blows into the tent and then leaves. And so, you know, I was pacing around, which I normally do before a take. And somehow, you know, it never happens where you're really ready and, you know, somebody calls action and you shoot the scene. But for like maybe the first time in my life and maybe the last time, that's what happened. And I found out that he'd been ready to shoot for like 15, 20 minutes or a half an hour. And he just didn't shoot because he was watching me. And he could tell when I was ready to shoot. And that's when they called it. And I went in and you know, first take.
I mean, I love Herzog because of exactly that, the sense of danger that he brings to his set, not in terms of physical danger and that he's abusing people, but this sense of capturing lightning in a bottle and all of that, and that's what all his best movies have.
I mean, Caspar Hauser, you know, the story of Caspar Hauser, Every Man for Himself and God Against All is the name of that movie, and the guy who plays the lead is probably one of the best performances I have ever seen in my life. Was crazy, and Werner would talk. They would have to talk him into doing a scene and all this stuff, but and everybody had to wait around for this guy to, you know, suddenly get that it was okay for him to do the scene, and that's how he shot the whole movie. And like I say, his performance was unbelievable, and I don't think anybody except Werner could get a performance out of that guy.
And I'm also reminded he made a movie where he hypnotized all the actors.
Yeah, he told me that was a really stupid idea.
Yeah, exactly. But this
it just didn't work.
What's made him so legendary? I mean, he just was living on the edge.
And he has a very simple things that turn him on and give him focus. For me, they had us say, you know, you better get some mountain climbing stuff. Serious, go to the. And so I went to the store, which was really one of the best stores for that. And I was talking. The guy said, "What do you need it for?" And I said, "Well, we're doing a movie about climbing Saratoga." And the guy, you know, he was like a young kid. He said, "That's a radical mountain, man. That is a radical mountain." And so I told Werner that, and Werner walked around for the whole rest of the scene. It's a radical mountain. You know, but he really, the point is that he had a very simple, I mean, I did this other movie with him, and it was about an alien, and he would call me up at night and say, "Aliens suck." But that was where he came from. That was the point of the movie, and actually, the point of the movie was how ridiculous it is, the idea of flying from here to another star. About, you know, that was what it was about.
And to just wrap up with Werner, I mean, it seems like maybe the most traditional one you did was in New Orleans with Nicolas Cage.
Yes.
Bad Lieutenant, of all things, a remake or sort of a slant rhyme with a lot of reptiles. That's the thing I remember about it.
I was like, why the reptiles? And then I thought, well, it kind of works.
They're iguanas like in the foreground of every shot, and you have these world-class actors acting away, but you're really looking at the iguana. Very sweet.
Nicolas Cage was great fun to work with.
Oh, well, no, so that brings me to, you know, not only the directors you worked with, and I feel like maybe we gave Lynch short change. Should we, any thoughts about him? He's also such a wonderful
First thing he asked me is, he's very enthusiastic, childlike enthusiasm. And the first thing I went to go meet him, and the first thing was, I'd never seen anybody that preppy.
Yeah.
He had on a preppy jacket and, trousers and the whole thing. And he kind of said, "Hey, Brad, It's nice to meet you. I have a question I want to ask you. How do you feel about actors having surgery for their parts? I said, as long as it's not me.
Oh my! Well, it's funny.
But he directed like a painter, which is kind of really what he was. Everything was in little remarks about little things. You know, maybe how your voice should be here, or just tiny little things. And for some reason, it worked. It made a great deal of sense on a much deeper level. You got what he was after. You know, it's amazing to me how every person who I consider as a great director is able to somehow get across a vision and have you understand it in a very visceral way.
So I just want to throw out maybe you know, Eyes of Laura Mars. So that was sort of early on. You were getting these interesting, just fascinating characters, and we mentioned Mississippi Burning, and then another one that comes to mind. Well, is the incredible deep dive you did on Exorcist 3. I think it's worth talking about in terms of you worked with the author himself, right?
Yeah.
And you worked on these
Blatt.
monologues over and over. What's his name? William Peter Blatty.
William Peter Blatt.
And they had made a second Exorcist, a sequel to the storied first one by William Friedkin, and most people don't really want to talk about that one.
You know, I mean, how exciting to ride on a big bug. I mean, I just, whose idea was
Darth
that?
Vader was that?
It's really like, yeah, you had Darth Vader on a big bug. I mean, it just was stupid.
But tell me, you did really give yourself over, and it's an incredible performance. You're a maniac in a jail cell half the time with George Scott.
Yeah,
the whole time. But talk about how you worked on the worked with.
Well, Blatty just was like all over this speech, and he was really, you know, had me do it a million times, and so we went and shot it, and I forget whether it was the first or the second, was so bad that they had us come in and watch it. I mean, and when you, first of all, it's impossible for me to watch myself, but when you really suck and you have to watch yourself, it's just like a horrendous experience. And then George C. Scott came up to me and said, you know, he's really got you crazy. What you really need to do is pick something important and just throw the rest away. And I just went, duh. And, you know, of course, we went back and did them, and they worked perfectly, and there was no problem at all. And then, you know, studios got involved, and they said, no, we did a study, and we have to have who's the actor who originally played the priest?
Oh, that dude, yeah.
Miller, Jason Miller, who's brilliant, but he was not in shape at that time. They had him shoot it, and he couldn't do it. I mean, he really couldn't pull it off. And so they kind of went, Brad, come back. And they gave me a day, and I sat in a room and redid the lines till I was comfortable, and then we reshot both scenes.
Wow.
I think the ones that were there originally were better, but these were okay.
And what did you? I mean, George C. Scott is sort of listening to your mania, but did you have fun working with him, or was it?
Oh, he's great. I mean, you know, he's a theater actor.
Exactly so.
From the beginning, and you learn in the theater quite that you depend on whoever you're working with. I mean, it really forces you to. And so, you know, he was that kind of guy. You know, he was. If it was my take, and a lot of times it was, he was like, you know, really there and really focused and really supportive.
which makes just an incredible difference. You feel like you're acting both to the character, but also an actor you admire, and it just brings you
who
everything.
I really admire, yeah.
Yeah, and so that was The Exorcist and Exorcist 3. And what is that when you were invited to consider Chucky? Sort of, was it?
No. Chucky was. I did a film, Fatal Beauty was, where I played a drug dealer.
Is that Whoopi Goldberg?
Yeah, I did it with Whoopi Goldberg.
Oh, sweet.
And the director got to do the Chucky movie.
And he'd made Fright Night, which is actually a wonderful classic from the
And he did the movie with me that I did with Whoopi Goldberg. He directed that as well. So he liked me, and he just called me up and said, "Do you want to do this?" And I said, "Fine."
Tom Holland.
Yeah. And so I did it.
And was it always? I mean, so obviously you're a real person in the beginning, a ne'er-do-well, and you have you're escaping, as Brad has been known to play. You're escaping from, I don't know, prison or something. And,
I'm on the run. They finally got me,
and then he lands in a toy store, and then the cop shoots you dead. But before you die, you crawl over to this Chucky doll. There's a whole shelf of them, and you transport yourself, I guess, with some voodoo that's never fully explained. Is it, or is that? Did you have a backstory?
I mean, sure. Yeah. It's kind of like explained, but I mean, it's stupid to try to explain it.
That's right. There's just some things that are just art, and there's no. But what's interesting is that there are two voices, because first. Oh, so the movie's actually about a little boy who's obsessed with this commercialized.
Has anybody here seen Child's Play?
Of course. Why do you think
only
they're
a few
here?
people? That's kind of great.
Yeah. Anyway, so the little boy is interacting with this doll at first. It's all he wanted for his birthday, and so on. And they have a very sweet little voice for the Chucky doll at first, and then the demonic Chucky takes over. Anyway, it was a big hit. And then
still is.
You could pay for Fiona's entire college career, I would think, at that point.
Except she didn't go.
Oh, yeah. Well, actually, it's funny we mention it because here we are in Woodstock. And when did you first move here?
I first moved here in '74, and I stayed here until it. Used to be that if you were, that any part was also auditioned in New York, because that's where actors would go when they wanted to learn how to act. When they were just starting out, you'd go to New York, study with whoever you were going to study with, and then people would audition you there. That's ended. And then you had to move to L.A., which I did. I kept the house, and then for periods I would come and stay at the house and so forth. But it wasn't, in about, I don't know, 20 years ago, I started spending a lot more time back up here again. And I finally moved here about 10 years ago, back. Full time. But this is kind of, I'm from West Virginia, and this is kind of the only place I ever really felt at home. I didn't like LA at all.
There's just so much more, which is a delight. I mean, for one thing, is you also have had a wonderful television presence, so to speak. First of all, I think you've done X-Files, you've done Star Trek. You were also in an Alien, the fourth Alien, so more genre fare, all classics in their own right. But I think Deadwood is something we have to speak about, because you did so many episodes. And tell us about the Doctor.
Regular.
Yeah. Some would say the best show on TV, although that's, For those, what would you like to tell us about The Doctor?
Well, I think David Milch is really sort of responsible for all that. I went in and auditioned in front of David, and he very weirdly, I found out was very much out of character. I went in and he just looked at me. He said, I think I'm not going to say anything to you. I just got a feeling, so let's go and do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I did it, and he loved it, apparently. And then I went back for my second audition, which was at HBO, at HBO's buildings where the executives were. And he kind of sat me down and he said, you notice that there's nobody else who looks like you around. That should tell you something. So I felt pretty comfortable at that point, but I had auditioned for the head of the thing, which I did. And I found out at that point that that's actually, David not talking was a really, truly rare thing. And his way of working was, he gave an English class in your character, in what he wanted. I mean, he would quote the Bible, he would quote, I don't know, Joyce, he would quote Kafka, you name it, he would talk about it. And, that was everything I was taught that you shouldn't do. And yet it somehow worked. I mean, I got it. I understood what he wanted. And he initiated every single scene. He started the scene, you worked with him. He kind of blocked it out, and then he handed it to whoever was supposed to be directing.
Wow.
So, he was just all over it. He was the main influence. His hands were more on that than I think any show I ever was in.
And then your daughter is Fiona, is on The Pit, which is a big hit now.
I should tell a David Lynch thing about her. She had been in Europe, and she was like she was not an easy kid. And she had gotten into a lot of trouble, some with the police. And so she left, and suddenly she got the idea that maybe she should educate herself. And so she went to Dublin and became a student in Dublin, studying for a leaving exam, what they called a leaving exam. And she got very disciplined. And she was coming back, and she was looking for something to do. So I asked David, I said, look, can you give her a PA job or something? He said, yes, but I have to meet with her. And so we sat down, and he asked her, first thing he asked her is, what are you reading? And she said at that point, because she was self-educating, and so she was at that point had fallen in love with Kafka. And so she was reading everything Kafka wrote. And he taught Kafka at Yale, so that was like the perfect thing to say. And he said, that's really good. He said, I'm going to tell you, I'm going to give you an apartment where you're going to stay. I'm going to pay for it. I'm going to give you this amount a week, and I'm going to cover you, and I'm going to take care of you. And my only thing I ask is that later on you pass it on. And he was going on, and he finally just stopped and looked at her and said, by the way, how come you're not an actress? So he wrote for her. Oh, wow. And the first thing, she was too inexperienced to do. And the second thing, he wrote her a part as one of the whores in one of the things. And he was like very excited, and he started her career.
Tell me, which movie, though? The Horse.
The what?
What movie was it?
It was a whole year on Deadwood.
Oh, okay. Wow. And so now she's on The Pit, and she invited you, or you were invited. You play her dad.
Yes.
How was that?
Well, it's odd. I mean, we spent years, you audition and you do it on tape. So she worked with me, I worked with her. Um, it's just like being in my living room again.
Yeah, exactly. You're also in, so you play the, if I would put it this way, the Donald Pleasance character in Rob Zombie's Halloween movies. Is that true? Are you the sheriff?
Yes, I was the
So
sheriff. Yeah.
everyone remembers Halloween. They've rebooted it, I guess, 3 times now. There are many sequels within each iteration, but Donald Pleasance was the somewhat hysterical sheriff in the originals. And
I was not hysterical.
no, you weren't. It was a very somber performance, yes. But if Zombie is all, Rob Zombie is also was more serious, I think. What was he like to work with?
He was way smarter than he acted. The second season, the second one, it was one of those things where they paid somebody and the guy just, gave him a paragraph, and there was no movie, and they needed to shoot it, and they gave it to Rob Zombie, and he wrote it in like 2 weeks, and he knew that so he kind of made a decision that he was going to have some rehearsal, and so we went in. And he wanted the family of us to really be absolutely wrecked from the first movie. He wanted to really show how damaged we were. So we were doing this whole thing around a table, and the kids had never seen Cat Ballou, and who was why can't I remember this guy's name? Lee Marvin, thank you. And Lee Marvin's performance in Cat Ballou was one of the funniest and most beautiful comedic performances I had ever seen in my life. And so I got up and started doing his performance, and the girls were all looking at me like I was a madman, and he put it in the movie.
Oh, wow.
And because that was what he was looking for. So he was smarter than one might think.
Yeah. No, I mean, he's carved out his niche. What have I forgotten that was meaningful?
Are we running out of, are we?
Oh, thank you. I wanted to talk about your eyebrows. How is it working for Peter Jackson?
Well, if you're asking about my eyebrows, you should talk to Claudia. She had to live with me. I tend to, how did that go? I auditioned for the part. I didn't get it.
Wow.
And so I gave him, I said, you get your 3 days to feel bad about it, and then you have to be over with it. And then they called me up and said, do you want to do it? And I said, sure. I don't know who the actor was, but he didn't get enough money. Neither did I, but that didn't matter. And so I did it, and I had this thing with, really, I got the character with Jackson's wife, Fran. We sat down, talked about it, and we kind of really came up with that here was a guy who was always ugly. And he was always teased when he was young. And he kind of made him very good about sussing people and where people will come across and how to avoid being the brunt of things. Yeah. And that made him a very good candidate for a diplomat. And he did that and got very good at it, but he was never really a part of it. And he kind of fell in love with the daughter, and she would never look at him, of course. And then, he was offered a kind of new respect and being and power and so forth, and he kind of fell down a dark hole. Yeah. And that's really how I saw him. Somebody who could have been something more.
And you had a lot of prosthetics for that. Do you enjoy that aspect? The whole idea that you go and get the
Who
makeup?
would enjoy that?
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
you're sitting still for like, well, it got much quicker. And I have to say, the guy who did that, you couldn't see it. I would go up and look in the mirror, and I could not see where the prosthetic,
Yeah.
where my real face and the prosthetic, it was so perfectly done. And he always started out with primary colors.
Mm.
So, nobody does that. And so, and he was just like, this like very normal, bro kind of guy. And, he was actually kind of a genius.
And would they do your character and then an orc and then the next?
Yeah,
I
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
just
yeah.
have a long assembly
Well,
line.
we all had our places to go, and they would
Yeah.
come to us. But,
Yeah.
if you were an orc, that guy was like, that guy had 14 hours of makeup, then an hour shoot, and then another 10 hours of taking the prosthetics off.
Yeah.
He had a long day.
What was Peter Jackson like?
He was, he looked like, he acted like he came from there, Middle Earth.
Yeah. In his shorts.
Yeah, he was, he had a kind of a really jolly aspect. He was very visual, extremely visual, and very smart that way.
Yeah.
And he knew
props.
The thing I saw students. How many people saw the students thing last night? Nobody. Oh, one person. Oh yeah, there's a whole group of people.
A gaggle.
Yeah, I think he learned that it's all about who you hire. Yeah. To play the parts, and he knew that. And when you see a student film, the ones that you really realize that the kids were great, but they couldn't always get the best actors. And, you realize how important that is. And he knew. Yeah. I mean, he really knew that he had to get good people. And, he did.
One thing that you've been saying over and over, and it's fascinating, is you audition for these movies, it seems like, through your career, even to the, I
know, isn't that horrible?
Well, it's a little odd because usually someone of your stature, there's this idea, well, you just have to offer them and it's all about the money and so on. And it seems like you're in this position of still like doing the song and dance.
Most of the things that I did were offers.
Yeah.
The vast majority. I maybe 5 or 6 movies I auditioned for. I was not good at it. My daughter is great at it. I mean, she auditions and she gets stuff, but me, not so much.
Well, now the kids, the young actors, they have their cameras and they have their little studios and they start bringing props in and they're
which I don't understand at all.
Yeah, it's a whole production.
I don't understand why somebody would cast a movie by just getting tapes, but that's what they do. I mean, it matters how you get along.
Yeah. Well, in the room, and even if it's the casting agent, but eventually the director should be there, and that rapport is so essential, and it's kind of been erased.
That's what I kind of thought.
Our process. Yeah. But so thank you for mentioning Lord of the Rings. Did I forget anything else? I mean, it's a long. I tried to write it down, but then I thought it was sort of tacky to have a piece of paper, so I'm winging it. But is there anything else we're forgetting about Brad's wonderful storied career? I mentioned all the wonderful, yeah. So I think we can open it up to the audience who may well know, at least have more questions than I have come up with. Is anybody, now the idea is that we have to get the mic. So please take the mic if you have a question. Does anybody want to ask? Brad, anything? Here's someone in the front.
Hi.
I have a two-part question about Mississippi Burning. When I think that was the year Rain Man might have won Best Picture, but I'm sure Mississippi Burning was probably a close second. When you're making a movie like that, are you aware that you're making a great movie, an Oscar-winning movie while you're making it? And that's my first. Second thing is, your character that you played was despicable, but your wife, played by Frances McDormand, was great. Did you know, working with her at the time, that she was destined for greatness, to a three-time Oscar winner? Could you sense that when you worked with her?
I thought she was brilliant in that movie, in Mississippi Burning. I mean, and she's was very supportive and very down to earth, and yeah. I mean, I felt like she was something. Definitely.
And what about the other question, which I think could be applied to various projects when you're on? Do you sense the magic, or are you just focused on the work? And, do you allow yourself to look forward to what it's all going to come?
A great deal of the time I'm given, I did scripts that I knew weren't that good. And I would kind of forget about it, that they weren't good.
Yeah.
And figured talk myself into putting my heart into it, and then walked away, and lo and behold, they weren't good.
But still,
that's most of my career was like that. I mean, being an actor is really a series of just learning how to deal with rejection.
yeah.
I mean, that's the life of it. Yeah.
And well, what is your perception of your journey overall? When you look back, you have. I mean, do you still keep up with the cast of Cuckoo's Nest?
No,
Christmas
not really.
cards?
That's the thing
No
about you
Christmas
get very
cards?
close to
Yeah.
people when you're working with them, and somehow it all goes away afterwards, which is strange.
Yeah.
Because you do get very involved. I mean, I love being on sets. It's really intimate and great fun, and sometimes you're just up all night talking to people, and then you get up and go act. But it's at one point I kind of thought about maybe it's not the end thing, what the picture and the thing actually becomes. It's more the act of doing it. Okay. And that if you can go on set and conduct yourself in a way that that made people feel like, because everybody there loves film. And that's why they're there ultimately, because they love film. And if you could do something to bring that back or make them feel like, yeah, this is what I'm here for, maybe you do a lot more good than anything than the movie itself will in the long run. I don't know why I said that.
Well, I just think it's beautiful because it is the journey, and it's the creative journey and the associations.
Oh, yeah, because we were talking about the life thing.
Yeah. The life thing. So what do you do in your spare time now? Are you...
I'm retired, and so
Yes.
I do whatever Claudia tells me.
And you have done some music or some spoken word. Is this true?
What?
Do you have you recorded on some albums? I think I've read. That.
No one has ever heard me sing, and there's a good reason for that. I played the didgeridoo for a while.
There you go.
It's a great divorce instrument because it forces you to get air down into your stomach. So I played that. Poor Claudia, I used to serenade her over the phone. And she put up with it for some reason. But anyway, yeah, I'm on some records playing didgeridoo.
Little known fact, folks. Any other questions from the audience?
Because Brad, you talked about theater, and one of the tour de forces that you've done recently was the two-character play with Amanda Plummer. Can you talk a little bit about how that came to be?
Sure. Amanda Plummer, I think is a great actress. I had never seen her on stage. But some of the stuff she's done is so unique and powerful, it just blew me away. And I got a call saying that we want to do this play called The Two-Character Play. It's a Tennessee Williams, and it just would be you and Amanda Plummer. And I was just really, that sounded terrifying to me, and I was ready to just run out the door and say no, and Claudia said, you have to, it's Amanda Plummer and you have to do it. You have no choice. And I realized she was right. So I agreed to do it. And, I worked at Circle Rep for years, and we were told that you don't show up for first rehearsal without all your lines fully down. So I had about 7 weeks, and I was working like maybe minimum of 4 hours and sometimes 8 hours a day on lines. And so when I showed up for first rehearsal, all my lines were down. Amanda, not as much. And, we kind of struggled, but then I started noticing things she was doing, and they blew me. I mean, like she had to put on her gloves when we were going to go outside, and she was terrified of going outside, and her hands would shake when she was trying to put on the gloves. It was just, little things like that. She never did anything the same way twice. This is going to sound like me being in awe of Amanda Plummer, because that's actually the case. And so we were doing it, and the director and production started really having problems. And there began to be a lot of drama. I won't get into the specifics, but it was just a lot of drama. And at one point, the director got angry and he pushed the stage manager and got in a cab, went to the airport and flew to London. And Marshall Mason, who was the artistic director of Circle Rep and a great director, I called him and told him what happened. He said, all right, I will come in and I will, but I will not allow any of this to get in the way of me watching tennis. That has to be the thing. And he kind of came in and saved us. Oh, wow. And we saw it, and it was the moment. He just told Amanda how wonderful he was, and then he turned to me and said, "Not so much you, Brad." And he gave me a new one, and said, "I'm going to see how this rehearsal goes, and I'll decide whether I want to do this or not." And so I went in, and we did an act, and he jumped up on the stage. He said, "I can work with this. This is great." Wow. So I was able to take his notes and do what he told him. And I saw In Cold Blood, and I thought that was extraordinary because there was something in that relationship that existed that could never exist with either one of those actors alone. And they were both wonderful, but they could never do what they did. it was a true, really ensemble experience where two people make one. And that's what we were going for. And, honestly, the thing I'm proud of is I think we got there. I think Amanda and I got there, that we kind of, and one of the actors was, they were interviewing actors and asked them, who were doing plays in New York at the time, and on their day off, did they go and see theater, and if they said, what performances did they like? And one girl said, I went and saw the two-character play, and she said, and I saw two people become one person, and I'd never seen that before. Oh. And I went, okay,
Yeah.
done.
Done. How long was the run?
We did it for as long as we could stand it, and then it was about over 100 performances.
Wow. And how was it for you? Theater versus
Well,
plays.
theater is terrifying, and every single time I got up before I went on, I would be pacing back and forth. How the fuck did you get yourself into this?
Mm-hmm.
How are you gonna, And then I would go backstage, and I would look at Amanda before we went on, and I would fall completely in love with her. It was the weirdest thing. And I would just say, just throw yourself out to her, and you'll be fine. And the performances would go, and then I'd walk her home, and by the time, she left, go on the elevator to her room, I couldn't wait to get back to Claudia. I mean, it was, so it's a strange place, the theater.
Yeah. Oh, well, let's continue on. These are wonderful questions. Anyone else? There's somebody in the back.
You were discussing working with directors like David Lynch and Werner Herzog, and you mentioned that I think David Lynch would direct in sort of a painterly manner, as you described it. I was just curious, which director has been the most effective at getting what you think is your best performance, and how did they do it?
Interesting question. Milos got there by never leaving on a scene until he was happy. David Lynch was just, I have no idea how he did it. He was just magical. We had 2 weeks of rehearsal with John Huston, so I knew what he wanted. And that was important, but that rarely happens, and he was very good at that. Who else? Werner Herzog is intuition. He was just phenomenally intuitive. I mean, each situation made him different. Who else?
Well, the Deadwood crowd, that seems...
Oh, and Milch. Milch was just very hands-on, and he just really knew. I mean, probably of all the people that I've worked with, David Milch knew more about what a scene was than anybody else. I mean, he knew, he had a tremendous respect for background. I mean, he understood beyond a shadow of belief that background was just as much a part of the movie as Deadwood is about a town, and the background was the town, and that's a character. How many people saw Winter's Bone? I always like to bring this.
I did.
Well, see it. Winter's Bone is about Appalachia. It's about sort of like Appalachia, and there's a young girl who this girl, his mother, the mom has disappeared. The father is dead. And she now has to raise this family and keep them going somehow. And she just fights for the family the whole time, and she's thinking about maybe the brother would be okay because, somebody would take him. But the girl, as she put it, she don't shine for anybody. And you see the environment of the movie is so explicitly and movingly portrayed. You see these expensive stuff going to waste in the yards, and this sign of poverty, and people afraid of being hungry, and all this kind of thing going on. But the one thing you see just in little bits here and there is these people, the respect that these people have for musicians. I like this movie.
Bring on your didgeridoo.
And she gets up at the end. She just sort of picks up this banjo, which was her father's, this kid, and can play it immediately. And because of that, she's going to be okay. That's what Milch understood. That the movies should and must create a world that is a character, that means something, that changes something in the people who and in the story. And that's what I find extraordinary that film can do, and unfortunately doesn't enough.
Yeah. Well, that was very beautiful. I want to sort of follow up and ask, do you have an aesthetic or a sense of yourself now about which do you like the third take? Do you love doing it over and over? With that Herzog, when he captured that moment, was that just like, oh, thank goodness? I mean, I'm interested in your aesthetic of the craft.
I'm like every other actor. I got to do it again. I mean, this is terrible. Let me just do it one more time. And unless I did something that I really felt was good, but that's rare.
Well, let's do the Winter's Bone speech one more time, because I mean, it was just so moving. I would say we can move on if I was directing. I mean, it is that incredible moment when you realize you've been transferred into the moment, and it's very special. And then the guy says, "Well, I didn't get the focus," and you're like, "Oh shit!" But yeah. Any other questions?
Are we done?
Oh, I don't.
Oh, we have a question. Wait a minute. You have to. There's the rules, and somebody's going to come with a microphone and give it to you. It is now happening.
In Mississippi Burning, it's about 3 persons that were brutally killed, and the murder was engineered by, the Klan. I've been in the town for business, and in the town you would not think a murder occurred there. But how do you handle that when you're trying to portray emotion and a story about the sorrow that's involved? Or is it nothing? What is it?
Brando talked about that in, I think, a really helpful way. He said, in the end, if you have to kill a person, it's just pulling a trigger. It is something, just a switch you can put in your head, and that's it. You don't focus on that. My character had a family, and he cared about his family. He was also a member of the town, and if there was a drunk, he kindly put the drunk in the car so that, there's a scene where actually my character did that, where, put him in the car and take care of him. So he was, he had a whole other side to But, you know, that was the South. And, you know, I like I say, I grew up in West Virginia, and you know, the Jim Crow era, I remember it well. That was just the way people were. I mean, I can remember somebody black getting on a bus, and somebody would go off on them, you know, and you'd see everybody turn around, but nobody said a thing, because if the police ever got involved, it would be the black person getting it, and everybody knew that. So things, you know, have changed a little, but the racism, you know, in this country runs very deep, and it has involved everybody at one time or another. So, you know, that was just my character's way of dealing with it. Was there's a line and you don't cross it, you know. And so I invest myself in that idea. It's only a movie, you know. But yeah, no, it's a real thing, and I meant to make it a real thing.
I think that, I mean, you do play ne'er-do-wells often, and, you know, it's interesting to analyze why that is, but obviously I think it's because you bring sympathy to these characters. And I always say, as an actor, because I always play the bad guy also, because of the tooth, I guess. But the point is,
I noticed you haven't done anything about it.
it's true. But you never play a villain, because no villain thinks they're a villain. They think they have their excuse and their worldview. So you never play the character.
Well, that's true.
Imagining they're bad. Even we were talking about Heath Ledger as the Joker, but he brings such sort of demented. He's not playing it to show how nasty and psychotic he is. He's like playing it as if everything is normal.
He is having a blast.
Yeah.
You know, he was good in that.
Yeah. What other performances have you enjoyed just out in the world, since we're sort of...
Well, I mentioned Bruno Hess's performance in that, the two killers in Cold Blood, the original black and white version. A very important performance for me was, God, I'm so bad with names. It's about a housewife who's no. No.
Oh, the Cassavetes movie?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Gene Rowland.
Gina
Rowlands.
in that was so raw and powerful. I tend to really like things that are raw. Frankly, those things move me more than anything. Like Claudia's daughter went to Yale, and they have this thing at Yale where they give them, I don't know, like $100 and some odd and a venue. If they want to do something, they can do it. They want to do a play, they can do it. And I went and saw a bunch of different stuff there, and it was wonderful. I mean, it was all people studying to be doctors or other things, but they really wanted to act. And they did it beautifully we're really committed and really strong. Lanford Wilson was an important person in Circle Repertory Theater Company. And his first play was Home Free. And the kids did it at Yale, and it was beautiful. I mean, it was a really, really raw and brilliantly directed and beautiful performance, and one of the best plays I've seen in years. So, for me,
Well, it's funny you mention it, because I once had the opportunity to do an interview, and as we wrapped up, I said, I want to see Spielberg and Scorsese, I want to see them make a movie for $1 million because we know they got the chops, and I want to see that sort of that raw intensity back, because now they have all the toys. So I have that same feeling of liking this, and that's why Herzog's such a hero, because he sort of feeds off of that spontaneity, puts himself in a difficult place where he can't control everything.
Well, he's no matter how bad the movie is, there's always something in it that's that you've never seen before. He's torn the envelope open once more. Yeah.
Are there any more questions? We are winding down, but we're happy to hear anything else.
Because there it is. Now I'm curious because you're talking about the rawness, and earlier you had mentioned Bicycle Thieves, where I think both of those actors were non-professionals, that they didn't have any elaborate training, but you're also an acting teacher. So how do you replicate that rawness, or how do you feel about casting non-professional actors? I guess something like that's the question.
Look, that has a lot to do with the director. Milos was, do it natural, It was good, but not so funny, that kind of thing. I mean, he just over and over and over again said, go upstairs, be with the crazy people. And we were upstairs and they seemed just as normal as everybody else. Of course, they were on drugs, but we all understood that this was supposed to be, very not dramatic, not crazy people drooling, but people who could walk outside and they would, the boat trip, when they go on the boat and everybody becomes these doctors.
Yeah.
That's his creation. That's him, Milos, creating the world he wants. So if you want everybody to be so real that you can't tell the difference between, you have to create it. You have to find, first of all, the people who can do that by auditioning, and then you have to insist on it.
I was wondering, in some of the later Chucky movies where you no longer appear but you're the voice, do you just go in for a day and that's the whole process, or is that a secret?
Well, my first wife was a keyboard player.
Oh no.
Yeah, she was, and she played scales every single day for like hours, and it got so I couldn't be in the house. So I built a room and sound insulated it against the house so that I could, be in the house
And not hear the scales.
and not hear the scales. And it also was a studio, so it's all rough and so forth, and barn siding, wainscoting, and the whole thing, so that it's any sound that happens dies immediately, which is what you want. And we did one, and then we started working in my studio. And so I could get up in the morning, leave my pajamas on, and do a whole episode of Chucky. No problem.
And be home in time for dinner.
And,
Well, that's, I just want to say we spoke about seminal performances, and honestly, Billy Bibbit is that to me. So thank you for Billy, but for all the rest of it. And thanks for today.
Thank you. Thank you.